welcome Hawk Nation to this week's podcast. Today on the show, I have Dan Spence, professional hockey player and goalie and owner of 360 Goaltending. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Corey. Appreciate being on.
Well, I appreciate you giving us the time, especially we're recording this, the 20th of October, and, we're under COVID conditions, but this is a busy time, I know, in your field. So being able to get some time with you is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, anytime. I love talking this kind of stuff, and I'm sure we'll hit on some key topics that I'll be able to learn from this discussion as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, for the listeners, I'm going to read a brief bio on Dan so you get up to speed on who he is, and then we're going to get into our discussion. So Dan Spence is a former WHL Allstar, a CIS Top Awarded Athlete, and professional goaltender. He is the owner of 360, not 360. 360 Goaltending, which is one of Ontario and BC's fastest growing successful goalie schools. Dan prides himself in learning and progressing from being a student of not only the game of hockey, but the game of business and life. Welcome, Dan. I'm looking forward to hearing more based on that bio.
Yeah, you bet. Let's go.
Yeah. So tell us, what's kind of the founder's story? So tell us, kind of the growing up, how you got into hockey, and then how you've been able to transition, your professional hockey career to having this business as well, which is always a dance. And you have a young family to boot, which is, you're juggling a lot of stuff. So tell us a bit about this founder's story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess myself with hockey, I started late. I was a little bit late to the party, starting, around 9-10 years old in Langley, BC, where we moved from the Sunshine Coast. It's kind of everybody's got their own story about how they got into it, but we moved to a new neighborhood, and I wasn't never into sports, never into skating, just never really took to it. I was kind of, just kind of did my own thing. My 5-year-old is a lot like that now, and never really stuck to anything. And the kids would be playing road hockey outside every day, and my parents would try to push me into the new neighborhood and meet some of the kids, but I was really shy, and I had a hard time, getting out there, and I just got pushed out one day, and I did it, and they threw me in net, and I guess I took to it, and it was kind of pretty quick, transition from, I guess, street hockey at 9 years old to ball hockey league, and then ice hockey league. And I just remember telling my mom one day that, hey, I want to do this professionally, and this is what I want to do. And I knew, starting behind, basically that I would have to work 2 or 3 times harder than everybody else. And
what age did you realize that you wanted to do this professionally? I think this is important to kind of pause on and find out.
I'd say, I remember I was in my room and I was looking at a hockey card of Jose Theodore, and I just looked at it and I said, I want to do this. And I must have been 9. I just started playing probably about several months into playing. I told my mom, hey, I want to do this seriously. And she said, okay. And then I just kind of made that decision. And looking back, like objectively, to make that decision as a 9-10 year old is, it's what we want from kids when we're working with them, kind of asking what you want. Right. But yeah, making that decision, that conscious decision, and just kind of knowing that it was going to be an uphill battle, but it's cool looking back, and I think business is the same way. You can kind of chunk your successes and your progress. And for me with hockey, it was always, if I do this input, I'm going to get this output. And right. it was this amount of work in, this amount of success out. And I was able to go from minor Adam house league, first year playing goalie, to AAA the next year in Langley, which is a big hockey center, at the time, I didn't know that was anything special, but looking back, like, that never happens. Like, it's tough enough to go from single A and double A to make the jump to triple A, but to go from house league as an obscurity to triple A in a center where all the people have been playing rep for a few years at that point, it really doesn't.
And you're a goaltender. There's not as many people. Like, there's one goalie, whereas there's multiple lines and multiple forwards or defenders. So, it's even more competitive just based on your position.
Yeah. So that was a key turning point, early on, that, hey, I'd get thrown into AAA, and to see that, like, it's cliche, but that hard work does pay off. And I just kind of told myself every day that I'm going to have to be, I would look around, I would say, I'm behind all these kids in these areas, but I would see that maybe they were maybe slacking off in certain areas or maybe being lazy or whatever. I just said, I can't beat them in these areas, but I can beat them by, being the hardest working goalie on the ice. And that really just kind of propelled everything forward. And within 5 years of, making that commitment when I was 9 or 10 years old, I was ranked top 3 or 4 in the country, being the second goalie picked in the WHL draft at age 14, Bantam, and then going on to play junior B at 15 in Revelstoke, which is not far from you, which didn't happen. Carey Price was really the only other 15-year-old in that kind of time frame to play junior at, age 15. I had an opportunity to actually play in Langley for the Hornets, but I turned that down because I was focused on the WHL. But at a young age, seeing that, hey, that literally you put this work in and it's going to happen. And coming from a non-hockey family, like my parents were the farthest from hockey people you could find. And it was, looking back, it's cool to say that, hey, you can really take ownership over this. And I, physically, I was, a fit kid, but never, not overly tall or, gifted in any specific way. I just put the work in. So, that was cool.
So persevere. Well, what I hear in that, you had a strong vision and conviction up front. You figured out effort is a differentiator.
Yeah. For me, it was
determination.
Yeah. And you can kind of just, I don't know. It's that simple, really. I think over time is that, for me, it was like I had to be the best goalie on my area for my age group. So it was Langley, and I had to establish that. And then I kind of saw it in my head as a bubble. And the metrics kind of I used were every year I was getting chunk better. So I could say, I'd sit in my room at like 11, 12 years old and say, well, last year I was here, stopping pucks or whatever you want how to reference how good I was. And now I'm here. So I do this and I put this here and I put this here. By age 15, 16, I should be playing in the Western Hockey League, right? And really literally sitting in my room and just putting those pieces together that if I do this, this, and this, it's going to translate to that. There's no other way for it not. Essentially what happened. And I think that's so true to anything. As long as you can kind of mark that progress, if you have a way to kind of reference that, you're going to get better. And it's been the same for business too. It just takes that time over time. You're gonna hit those strides. So yeah. So
let's talk about that, because you're still a young guy. Like you're still in your 30s and your early 30s even. So you've been able to transition from successful amateur, being one of the top in the country, to being a professional player, which already anyone that makes it to the pros is a 1%er. But to be a goalie is a fraction of that, because there's only so many in the league compared to, the other positions. So how has that transition where you add in now this business? How do you get into business and why?
Well, I remember going back a bit, I remember BC Best Ever. I don't know if you remember the BC Best Ever program. I don't know if they still call it that, but it was they invite the top 14, 15-year-olds into a conference. And I remember somebody came and did a talk in Langley to a big group. And they said, based on these statistics, only, 1 or like 2 out of the people in this room are going to play, in the Western League, or I think maybe 5 of us in the room would play in the Western League. And then out of that 5, only 1 or 2 would play on the NHL if we were lucky, some of those stats, right? And I remember looking around the room, and I remember, it was a big room, a lot of us there, and a lot of good players, basically all AAA players. And I remember thinking, well, I was just kind of sizing myself up, and I said, well, why wouldn't that be me? I was almost offended by the guy making it seem like it was so difficult, because I really, not to say it's not difficult, but I think in the same thing with business is if you take that attitude, and that's why parents always told me, they see how hard I worked in hockey, they would say, well, whatever you're doing here is going to apply anywhere else. I didn't want to do anything else, and when you ask how did I get into the business side of it, this is still not, I physically, if my body was where I wanted it to be, I'd be playing until I couldn't play anymore. And I'm, it's bittersweet that I'm at that state right now, that the goalie school is going very well. But no, I would still be playing competitively if it wasn't, a struggle in the morning to, with my back and my hips. So they've been mangled, and it's not fun in that sense anymore. But yeah, getting into business, the business side of it, I can think back specifically, we were, back in Langley, we were at a white spot in Langley. We were doing goalie camp with a school that, not to throw any shade on the goalie school that got us started, but we were having lunch one day at a goalie camp, and we didn't get enough food. and it became an issue. We went to one of the head coaches. Hey, there's food in this lunch package, and we're hungry. We've been on the ice 2 or 3 times a day, and we're still hungry. I got to perform. And they said, that's it. Sorry, you got your food. There's no more. And I remember turning to my good friend Justin at the time, who we became partners in 360 Goaltending, and I said, if I ever run a goalie school, the kids are never going to be hungry. And he said, well, why? Maybe we should do that. And it kind of got started that way. That we said, yeah, we could do this. And we started kind of poking holes in ways where we thought we could do things the way we wanted to do them, and set kind of some precedents that, some standards that how we thought we would do it if we were to do it. And that kind of got the idea going. And then when I was at college, even through major junior, I would go out and help. And I was goalie coaching basically since I was 14 years old, helping with the younger kids. And then, 15, 16, starting to get paid to do it. So, I mean, I'm I guess over 12 years in now. I don't know, more than 12 years in. I'm what is that? 17 years almost in doing it now as a summer job. Right. And then now it's been the last few years being, kind of progressing out of hockey competitively. It's been a full-time thing, but with school, when I was playing at Nipissing, it started literally as my first client called me out of the blue and said, hey, I'll pay you this much to work with my kid. You don't have a car, so I'll pick you up and I'll drop you off. And it just started with that one client. And from there it progressed to more and more small group stuff and then summer stuff. And it was a summer job in the sense we would do these camps, and I would kind of use these camps to fund my own training, so that I could train with my coaches. And then
keep you sharp in the off season.
Keep me sharp. Exactly. So it was something that, I did and a lot of times, it would be just, I would get on the ice and I would skate with the kids. So if somebody booked a session with me, I wasn't just standing there telling them to skate. I would be doing it with them because that was benefiting me too. So, just like, you have limited time to get in the gym, you can do your reps with your clients, and you're getting your workout too. And it's a win-win for everybody. So that's kind of how it started in North Bay. And now,
that's excellent. And it speaks to a few things. Like you saw, what was out there and you saw a gap. And I can appreciate, as someone in training, venue and the experience that people have around the training, like crappy meal or too hot of a room, too cold of a room, too much noise. It's those things that really are outside the scope of what the deliverable is that have a profound impact. So you're looking at the total experience for your clients, but also bringing a level of expertise as a credible pro to, the younger generation and that. So what made you choose kids? Was it just because, what's the passion for working with kids?
Well, it goes back to just me being an athlete, a younger athlete. And I always kind of felt like, I wanted more from the programs I was working for. Nothing against the programs I tended to attend the kid. They were great, but I would kind of have an idea in my mind and say one for instance comes to mind is puck handling. For as a goaltender, nobody works on puck handling. And I was at the point where I almost wanted to hire a skills coach to work on my puck handling. So now, I mean, we do, and this is leveraged through, and I got to give Eli Wilson credit because he was the kind of the first goalie school to do a full puck handling clinic, but we offer that now regularly, a full puck handling clinic. So a lot of the stuff that I felt was lacking or that I wanted as a 12 to 14-year-old, 11-year-old kid, I just think back and what was I missing? What was I wanting? And we just try to offer that. So, it's the content, like you said, but it's also the experience of when kids leave our program and they're doing our program, we want them to feel a certain way, because ultimately you don't necessarily remember what exactly you did. You don't remember the drills, but you remember the people. You remember the atmosphere, like you said, was the room too hot? Was it too cold? And you remember, that's kind of what you go away with. I find when I was a kid, that's what we go away with most. And that's what we want our kids. Obviously the content is very important, the technique, but going away feeling good. Exactly. It's the baseline. Exactly. Yeah. So
there are people you meet, the people you meet and how you felt going through it too.
Exactly. Big time. Yeah. Big time.
And you'd mentioned playing at Nipissing, and we have a friend, Dr. Rob Graham, who was on the show here recently, who well, because he's also a goaltender and he does some stuff with you as well, right?
Yeah, Rob Graham has been instrumental in maintaining our market reach in North Bay and really just keeping everything sharp and contacts and networking out there. He's been can't thank him enough for what he's been doing, because when I left, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was slowing down, but there was a big continuous need for it, because I was there for basically living there for 4 years, and then I went to go play in Europe. So there's a bit of gap where I wasn't there, and I got introduced to Rob through a mutual friend, and we hit it off, and being able to keep him going with some steady coaching and speaking engagements, which he's been fantastic at in the North Bay area, has really helped keep the business going there as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've all talked offline about the role of the mental side, both in business and in sport. And you talked about the confidence you had to have and the courage. So to pursue a professional career, to go in business, takes courage, but a level of confidence too, because you're going to face challenges, you're going to face adversity. But it's that, biting down on the mouth guard and going forward type mentality that, high performers have, whether it's sport or life. Tell me a bit about the role that mindset has played for you, both in sport and business.
Yeah, I mean, it's cliche now, almost like the mindset and mental toughness, but yeah, you can't really speak on it enough. And we can do all the skill work and technical stuff in the world with the kids we work with, but if they don't have that edge and that kind of that want to get better and the why they're doing it, it's really all for naught. And bringing in people like Rob Graham, we've had a lot of guest speakers get involved with our program. Dr. John Stevenson has been one of them. Recently. He's works closely with Carter Hart and Brayden Holpe. Been fortunate to have a lot of good people involved with the program, and kind of integrate that culture into our group, and setting some standards that we always go back to. So we've really leveraged a lot of guest speakers and quality coaches over the years, and it's kind of been able to make the program kind of good momentum for sure.
Absolutely. And I know as a kid growing up, in whether it was wrestling, track, whatever, performing at that high level, those speakers and that you remember,
Yeah, it could be one or two things, right? It could be one or two things, just a little bit of a tip to, hey, when you're feeling this way, spin it this way, and, or just little things. And you look back but you also look back at your career. I look back at my career, and there's many times where I needed to hear some of those things. So for me, I guess the reason, I don't say the reason the school's been successful, but for me, my kind of philosophy is I like to give kids what I didn't have or what I didn't know I needed at the time. Right. So if I can find somebody like John Stevenson, who, works with these world-class athletes and gets these guys where they are, he's going to be able to, slip something in there that, maybe the kids only hear 2 out of 10 things, right? Maybe they only really resonate with 1 or 2 of those things, but I guarantee you there's that one thing, it might be 3-4 years down the road where they're, playing up wherever, and they'll have that light bulb moment where, hey, John told me that, or Dan told me that, or Corey, I heard about this, and they're able to insert that. And that's kind of what the goal is, to have those moments where they can attach to something like that.
You bet. And it can be a real tipping point. Now,
for sure. Absolutely.
I want to bring up something that may be difficult to talk about, but I talked to you a bit about this. We're talking about mindset, but identity in professional sports, when you work so many years to make it to professional sports, it's a finite time that you're playing in a career. That's not the only career people are going to have. I mean, yes, you can make great money in sport, but people are wired that, you're not just going to golf and, sit on the beach all day. If you're a professional athlete, you're active and you're a go-getter. But your identity is attached to and being used to being put on a pedestal. And, people blowing sunshine up your butt all the day. So when you find yourself in a transition from what you spent, half your life as an identity, because if someone said your name for, half your life, it was attached to a role you play. Tell me about identity and how, what that's been like for you as you're transitioning. You've got a foot in both worlds.
Yeah.
You're still a professional goaltender as well as this business. Tell me how you balance identity and the challenges as well as the insights you have there.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I think it's been a harder transition than some. You talk to some former players, and they kind of have a feeling that, hey, their career's winding down, and they make that transition. And maybe they say it's easy, maybe it's harder than they say it is. But for me, it's been very difficult. I'll be candid with that. It has not been easy, and that might be because it hasn't really been on my own terms. I'm definitely not the first, not the last guy to get have an injury and not be able to perform the way they want to do. For me, it hasn't really been an acute injury. It's more of a it just has dragged on and on and on with thousands of dollars and treatments, and we haven't really been able to pinpoint exactly what it is. And maybe that's been part of it, but the transition's not easy. Like I think I told you when we spoke on the phone last week, I remember the worst day of my life was not the worst day. Well, I guess one of the worst days of my life was a real turning point for me mentally I went from Calgary Flames main camp. So we went through exhibition playing in front of, sold out building and in Calgary. I went down the ranks in the AHL and went down to the Central Hockey League, and I was without a job about this time at that point. So after going down that ladder, I was broke, not body hurting, and I was mowing a lawn in Port Moody for a buddy of mine who had a lawn care company. And I this old rickety van I was driving with the fumes of the gas cans everywhere, and it was raining, and I was slipping in the mud, and it was cold, and I was just covered in mud and grass, and it was like fall October in Port Moody. It's not always the nicest weather. And driving home and just thinking, what the heck has happened to my life? A month ago I was playing in front of a sold out building and having an NHL jersey, and now I'm mowing lawns for $12 an hour, and this is all I've got. Like, I didn't have anything else at the time, and I needed the money.
Wow.
And that was a real tough day to go from that transition. You talk about an identity shift. And I was embarrassed to go to the rink in my hometown at that time because everybody knew me as Dan Spence, the goaltender who was went through major junior and supposed to be playing pro hockey at 21 years old, and I wasn't. And I didn't want to leave my room. I was embarrassed to leave my room. I didn't even want to go coach. I didn't want to I was getting offered to get paid to coach, and I didn't want kids asking me, well, why are you here? Why aren't you playing? I didn't know what to tell them. I was embarrassed. So yeah, and that was that was 10 years ago. And even now, transitioning out, I never want to be that guy that, I just feel like a lot of ex-players they give the excuse, well, I got injured, that's why I didn't make it in hockey or whatever like that. I never wanted to be that guy. And, ironically, when kids ask, well, how come you're not still playing? I don't want to say it's because, hey, I'm injured, because physically I'm in, I feel like if I could do it, I want to be doing it. But yeah, it's been tough. And it's kind of bittersweet in staying in the industry because, and that's kind of why I'm starting to now pursue more, maybe some professional coaching jobs. But it's kind of probably why I've stuck with the development field, working with younger kids, because, I'll be honest, a few years ago, it would have been really tough to work with an OHL club or, even a minor pro club, because I'd want to be doing that. I see myself in that competitive atmosphere. To get the call. I'm still looking at exactly. Yeah. So, and mentally, I'm not right. If my body if I wake up tomorrow and we feel, I get the magic bullet that makes me, I find that whatever feels better, I'm probably going to want to be pursuing hockey. And I know that's not uncommon. A lot of guys still think they can still play, but also a lot of guys are good with it. They make that clean break and they're good. They don't look back. And for me, I'm being kind of one foot, like you said, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So I always said, once I make that 100% decision with the goalie school, we'll be going, it'll be an upward trend because, I've been in it and I'm committed to the kids we're working with, but, mentally I'm still, that identity shift is tough. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I get it because I see, as a fighter, I was a competitive fighter, and I see these older fighters, Oscar De La Hoya is talking about making a comeback.
Yeah.
You got Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson having a fight coming up, and Tyson's 54. But, when I watched video of him, he's got that speed and that snap still. And I get it. I was, in my 40s when I finally had to stop because you're doing it to try and stay in shape. But when you're training with those young guys, I'd get hit and I could be injured. I could have cracked ribs for 2 weeks, and then I'm not working out, and I'm doing it to stay in shape. And meanwhile, I'm not able to work out enough. So I'm putting on weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me, what are some of your success habits and things that keep you at the top of your game, and to give you that mindset too, to no matter what, just figure shit out?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Looking back as an athlete, I almost kind of had, I think, a sick kind of look on my competition. I would say it was my goalie partner. I would kind of size them up and say, okay, if I look back, any goalie partner, right? You're your teammate, and you're friendly with them, and you want them to do well, but you look at them and you say, okay, where are their flaws? How can I be better than this person who, we're 50-50 here. It'd be little things like again, the working harder isn't obvious, but maybe it's getting to the rink earlier, right? I can get to the rink earlier. I can stay later. And you kind of look at things, and you look at the cross them, and they say, are you willing to, mentally you're not talking to them, but you're in your head, you're going, what am I willing to do that you're not? And I think once you can kind of do that to your, whether it's a business or, sports, your competition, you say, what will I do that I know you won't? And I think if you do that, you've kind of owned it a little bit.
Yeah. So I hear attitude and character.
Yeah.
Number one, that'll differentiate, especially nowadays where there's a lot of entitlement mentality.
Exactly.
Where I think people just showing up, and I think we coddle kids too much.
Oh, big time.
This whole doing away with competition and no ribbons, no first place. I'm sorry, they're going to go for a job interview or, be in a competitive situation, and there's competition in the world. So, and not doing it, they then show up, and it's no wonder they come with an entitlement mentality, because they haven't had to develop resilience. And then if they have any setbacks or challenges, they have no resilience. So you get this epidemic of mental illness because people just can't handle challenge or obstacles because we coddle them and love them to death.
Exactly. And I think that kind of that mindset of competitiveness, like you said, is what what did help me. And when I look back at moments where I faltered, I took off the foot off the gas, that was lacking. So for me, and not say that works for everybody, but for me, having that ultra competitiveness with myself, and with, the competition or even teammates around me, wanting to be better than, the teammates in practice, and not letting anybody score a goal. And I, now that I'm not in the game competitively, I always like to ask, even when I was there, when I would go to a team, say it was the Ontario Reign in California, where, Michael Hutchison was the year before. I would ask his teammates, I would say, okay, like Hutch was here last year. How was Hutch in practice? And they would tell me things like, well, Hutch would never let us score a goal. Like he was ridiculously anal about not getting scored on. Even if the puck was from the corner and the dribble was over, we'd try to shoot pucks to the net, and he'd reach down there and grab it. He just wouldn't let us score. So I always like to ask guys that have done it, or guys that have been with guys who have done it, what they did, what their success habits were, and there's always little things you can implement. And now that
so mentors. Is that
mentors, big time.
Yeah,
mentors. And I think there's always a path. There's always there's that saying, success leaves clues. Every time somebody's done something, there's little things that they did that you can steal, you can take. And like a guy like Dominic Hasek would say, he would always look at another goaltender, good or bad, and there was something he could either take from them, or something he didn't want maybe to do, something they were doing wrong, that he would still turn as a positive. And add that to his game. So kind of being a sponge in that sense. I still do that even more now, and I should have done that a lot more when I was younger. So,
well, and I'll pick up on the sponge, like it's that learning orientation, like always learning and developing. And with that, you need humility and a groundedness, right? That you aren't there. Like when you're at a high level, I mean, everyone's a freaking cheerleader, except coaches and players, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone around you's, blowing sunshine up your butt at a time as a young man when you're most susceptible and moldable, right? And you see some people buy into it and then forget what got them there, the things like the effort, the attitude,
Yeah. And that was for me, you know, a lot of people look back at my junior career and they say, hey, well, with your numbers and your, you know, accolades or whatever, how are you not NHL drafted? Well, I'll tell you how I wasn't. And when I was 17, I stopped doing that. You know, I stopped for about 6 months, I took my foot off the gas, and I didn't have that kind of like insane competitive drive and that relentless work ethic that had got me there. I'd kind of coasted a bit. And again, people are telling you you're doing great. And, you know, I remember specifically we were in Kamloops playing the Blazers, and it was a game I wanted against Devin Dubnyk. And I wanted that game. And I wasn't playing, and I had to stay out and practice and work. And I was pissed that I had to work. And like looking back at that now, I look like such an entitled, you know, little brat that I was pissed off that Dave Lowry, our coach, was pushing me and a couple of guys that were injured, not playing. And I remember I lost some sort of competition, and I had to do something like, I don't know, some stupid like 50 butterflies. And I remember I did my 50 butterflies, and he said, no, you didn't, or we got in an argument. And long story short, I gave him some attitude, and I regret it to this day. But it was things like that, not having that, all the things that got you there. But I guess that if the takeaway from that is you got to know what is going to work for you. You have to be willing to take in new information to sponge it up, but don't get away with what works for you just because you've got some upswing, right? You got to keep on driving through when you have that upswing. You got to double down. And that's what I see with kids that are in that 16, 17, 18 range. They think they've made it because they're playing major junior. They're in the OHL, they're in the WHL. And I want to just be screaming at them, like, okay, you're in a great spot, but you need to double down. Like you need to sell the farm now. Like now's the time to sell, because the next 2 years, if nothing happens, like you're here and your options are higher or like dropping big time.
Or it's done. There's going to be a finite time.
It's done.
The minute you age out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another discussion for hockey in Canada. Like, you know, the European model has a much more of a longevity to hockey careers. But yeah, kids at 8, you're at that pinnacle and you think you've kind of made it because everybody's telling you, you know, it's the NHL. The WHL is the NHL for major junior, like the whole hockey league. Like you're on a pedestal.
That up to 18. It's what you do up to 18. It really determines if
it's a race to 18, and then you need to whatever you did before that. You feel like it's a lot. That body of work, you need to boil that down, and then the next 3 or 4 years, you gotta push, and that's where I never did that, and I regret it to this day. You know, in college, I kind of had that realization that hey, like whatever I did up until that point got me successful. And I remember the 1 year, my last year of college. I look back to whenever I had success. So that kind of, you want to call it a blueprint or whatever, what worked for me. And I remember I invested like 20 grand in myself. I took out my student loan for my books and everything. And I put it into training. I spent about 20 grand one summer training, ice time, yoga, therapy, everything. And I was goalie of the year that year. So it's looking back, it was that simple. Like it's hard, but it's that simple, and it does work, but you have to double down.
And everyone who achieves a certain level of success, there's a price you pay because you have to sacrifice other things. So I remember in fight camps, right? Or, you know, in season and playoffs, you know, you're stopping certain habits that you might get away with. You know, you're eating as healthy as you can be. You aren't going out on a Saturday night with maybe some friends you grew up with because you have an early morning practice, or you just you can't, you know, be not even hungover, just slow because, you know, at that level, it's not happening. And I used to hate, you know, not being able to go out for beer and wings when fights were on or something like that, because I had to cut 25 pounds in a week. Well, you know, that's not going to help if I go out for beer and not. Yeah.
And that's that kind of yes or no question that, you know, you said there. I think for high level athletes or performers in any walk of life, you have to ask yourself, does this action help or does it hurt what I'm trying to go after here? Right. And some things are neutral, sure. But most times it's a simple yes or no. And I think I listened to, what was it? Impact Theory, Tom Bilio on Impact Theory. I think it was called, he calls it bright lines. And I think the term is called bright lines. If it's a bright yes or a bright no, it just makes it easy. And once you start living by that, is it chicken wings or is it chicken breast? It just makes your life simplified a lot more when you do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So what, what would be one tip you would give, what's the one thing if you wanted to say something to potential athletes, who are coming in, what's Dan Spence and 360 about?
Well, we want to work with high level kids who want to get, I mean, for me, it's I want kids to do what I did and then triple down on that. I want to see kids do way better than I ever did. And I want to be able to give them experiences that they're going to be able to leverage and learn from, and basically just use our school as a platform to help get them, where they want to be. And again, like I said before, it's we're trying to kind of create the environment, the ideal environment that we would have wanted. And we get younger coaches working for us. We get a lot of students, our almost whole staff. It's 80% of our staff, Rob's being really one of the only exceptions, that weren't former students. We're now, that many years in that we have younger coaches at 21, 22, 23 that were all former students several years ago. And they sometimes ask me like, well, I've got a private lesson about this one-on-one. What should I do? I said, well, what do you want to do? Like Derek Rive is one of our younger coaches. I had this conversation with him last week. I said, what did Derek Rive want from me when I was training you at 12 years old? What did you want from me? And they go, okay. And then it's just like, I'm like, do you need your drills? He's like, no, I'm good. I know what I need to do now. So it's kind of repeating that cycle. That's been really cool for us to look around the ice. Like we were in North Bay just on Sunday, and we had, with 20 goalies out there, and, and looking around at each net, and each coach other than Rob is a former student, and the session's going great because it's that culture we've instilled that I don't have to tell these kids what to do. They just know what to do because I've been doing it with them for years before that.
Yeah. And I know in talking offline, you've talked about, it's not just about the technical and the mindset. Like it can't be just about the sport either. I think that's where people run into danger and the struggles that you talked about, because our identity and our worth as a person sometimes gets tied to how we do, and whether it's sport or in our business. And I know I felt that attachment, and that's a real struggle for people, but that's part of the lessons and, part of your story that you bring too. So, you talked earlier in the podcast about how you didn't want to be out there and to have that story out, but I think it's that part of the story. And I don't think we had talked about even that gap where, you were doing real well and you kind of went on cruise there for a bit, and it was an off season, and then
one season and that could be it, right? Like that's your, and again, in business and in anything, in sports specifically, several months of you taking off, that could be it. And our coaches would always say, we had some pretty good lineup of coaches that were hard on us. Like it was old school style coaching. If your hat was just crooked, just a little way on purpose, they'd come in and smack that hat right off your head. That's what it was like. If you were not, sitting at attention when the pregame speech was going on, that you would get screamed at in your face for not being, awake for the game. For those guys, Kelly Kissio, Dave Lowry, Joel, what they would tell us is teams would call them and ask about us. They said, we want to obviously say good things about you guys, but if we don't say anything about you guys, or if we're not promoting you guys, that's basically a no from us. Like we might not, physically say something negative about you, but if we're not saying good things, that's basically bad things. And that was something that, and that's a whole nother topic, but because
people are hiring at that level, they're asking questions around character and attitude.
Exactly. So right? if you don't have a coach, and for me, looking back, like every coach I'd played for up until that point, I got along with great. No, they would never say a bad thing. It was always positive, but these were all like player coaches. So for me, going into an environment that was at 16 years old, where they expected us to be pros, these were former NHL guys from, the different era, and they expected me to be, and like you said, kids are coddled, and looking back, I probably had a bit of entitlement, thinking that my coaches are supposed to be this way for me, rather than saying, what type of player does my coach want me to be? Right. And there's just a different way to look at it. You expect something from your coaches your whole playing career. But the way we tell kids is, which type of coach do you have? You can usually pinpoint them into three categories. And
what do they want from you?
What do they want from me?
It's not just about
exactly them. Exactly. Yeah. They wanted us to be there. If you're not 5 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late. And I was a stubborn kid to saying, I'm 2 minutes early. I'm still on time. I'll tell you, I'd come to meetings sometimes and the door would be locked. The meeting would be at 9 a.m. I'd be there at 8. 8:57 thinking like, hey, I'm good, the door would be locked. And I'd be pissed because, hey, I'm early, you're locking me out, but they're trying to send that message. So, it was little things like that. It wasn't my on ice performance. It was, I was perceived as being late for a meeting, say Phoenix Coyotes or Arizona Coyotes call, and they say, hey, we're interested in Dan. What do you think? And you say, well, we locked him out of a meeting this morning. Like, how bad does that? They're not picking you. They're not. So
you're done.
For me, I was there long enough. I was there for almost 5 years that, I'd had club records. I was an all-star. I was good enough that they didn't want to get rid of me, but I wasn't doing those things, those habits that I've had to learn the hard way now that I instill in all our kids. I wasn't doing those things that it was enough to sacrifice 6 months of maybe taking, that work ethic off. You can't, you got to insulate yourself in all these areas, or else you're susceptible to, having a bad month or having a bad couple months and that being it. And that's the sad part. Like, that is really, when I look back at my career, it's sad to think that, I let half a season and a couple, meetings or whatever, being late for this and that, get in the way of my biggest dream, the one I even still have today. Like this guy for the Leafs that played the Zamboni driver, all I ever wanted at that point later in my career was I just wanted to play one game, even if it was just like a shift. I just wanted that one, be on that NHL. I said, hey, Zamboni driver in Toronto can do it. Why can't me at 32? Why can't I still do it? But you learn. And again, it's cliche to say, hey, some of us learn the hard way, but some of the guys that learn the hard way do become the best coaches. And being a hockey goalie
and
coach.
That's just it.
Yeah, it wasn't.
We can learn from our successes, but I don't know about you, but I've learned way more from setbacks or failures.
Yeah, or lack, not filling the space you saw yourself and looking back.
Exactly, where I missed the potential.
Where'd you miss the mark?
Squandered opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And that's
in business now. It's like sport, like professional sport. It can take years to build up the business, and just one day, one thing.
Yeah.
And it comes unraveled.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, with 360 goaltending, we've kind of taken that same approach as, we want to be, as professional as we can be. And it comes down to, what you wear, how you talk to, to the kids, to the parents, to, the time you're putting in, and all these things matter. For us, it's, you look at some goalie schools and hockey schools, and the coaches are out there in mismatched stuff, and they're wearing, whatever. And we're, we do our best to, we want to be uniform. When we get to the rink, we're professional, and all these little things. And maybe we're a little bit overboard with it, but I really think it's that perception. And it does.
How you show up is how you show up.
Exactly. Right. So yeah, we're big on that. And that's a lot due to, the learning experiences I had and not knowing how to dress. And a quick story here, when I was, I tell a story to the kids sometimes that when I was 18, the Toronto Maple Leafs invited me to a Memorial Cup game. It was when the Memorial Cup was in Vancouver. So we just lost out to the Medicine Hat Tigers, who in the conference final. So I was at home. The Memorial Cup was, I think this was maybe 6 weeks after we'd been eliminated. I get an email or a call from the Toronto Maple Leafs. They say, hey, we're going to be at the game. There's tickets for you at the front office. And that was really all they said. And they were testing me. I didn't know this at the time. They were testing me. So I remember I came home from a workout in Coquitlam, back to Langley, and I was going to go back later that day. And I didn't, as stupid as it sounds, I didn't know what to wear, because I didn't know if this was like an interview, or I just thought it was weird. I said, why are they leaving tickets for me at the front? Right. And so I didn't know what to wear. I didn't want to look stupid. I didn't want to wear a suit, and I wasn't playing. I thought, well, I'm not playing in the game. I'm in the stands. So I wore jeans and like a Hollister Abercrombie type thing, and not look, I didn't look professional, put it that way. Right. It's casual. Yeah. And so I get to the game, I'm rushing to the game, and I didn't account for the traffic, and the Memorial Cup, there's nowhere to park. So I'm parked like 20 minutes in the rink. I'm jogging to the rink. I had a workout earlier that day, so I drink like 3 liters of water, and I have to pee like crazy. And I don't want to stop because there's nowhere to stop. And so I finally get to the front. I find out my tickets. I don't even know where the box is, because I always went to the rink at the Coliseum. I always go around the back. I don't even know where to go. And I finally get my ticket, and the rink is packed. And I'm thinking, like, do I go to the bathroom, or do I risk being late to sit down? So warm-ups are starting. So I run up to my seat, and I look around we're in the upper portion of the bowl, and right. It kind of curves around, right? And I'm looking, and I see a row. I see just a whole row, and it must have been like 50 people. And this specific row was obviously the scouts row, and they're all suits all the way around, right? So I'm like, oh crap, I'm the only one wearing jeans here. And I'm walking around each scout, like, pardon me, excuse me. And I finally get to my seat. I meet these guys. It was two of the Leaf scouts and another player, Zach Hamill, who I think he played a couple games for Boston, really good player when we were kids. And he's obviously wearing, suit, business casual. And I just remember my heart thinking, like, I screwed this up already. Like, before it even started, I screwed it up, right? So after the game, we watched the game and whatever. We went for dinner after the game, and then we did a formal sit down and the questions and that. But I ended up being brought back to a kind of a prospect type thing. But I think that first impression, again, it didn't matter how well I performed in the fitness test. For me, psychologically, I was just sitting there all game feeling like a bum. Yeah, it was just like. So now it's like, I don't want anybody to go through that again, because that was a horrible feeling. Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'm wearing, I'm the worst dressed guy in the whole row of 50 scouts there. So yeah, well,
and it's interesting because I remember, growing up in Kamloops, I was, my lab partner in chemistry was Dave Chizowski, and Corey Hirsch, graduated with. So, we had all the Blazers, and game day, everyone's wearing suits.
Yeah.
During that day in high school, like.
Oh, really? At the school? Wow.
At school, wow. Right? And during the day, right?
Yeah.
Because it was that show of professionalism, and it gets you in a mindset.
Yeah.
Right? We know when we throw on a suit, and it's always interesting. And I remember even our wrestling team, we would dress a certain way on tournament weekend, right? Because it helps with the mindset, because you're professionalizing yourself, and and again, how you show up is how you show up.
Exactly. So that wasn't a great feeling. And again, we share that's kind of the stuff we like to share with the kids. It's so simple, absolutely. Right? Over prepare for these little things, and you won't have those regrets looking back.
Right, because everyone thinks it's just technique and desire that's going to do it, and it's not. It's all the little things. When it comes down to, the pool to choose from is big, and it's little minor differences. It's going to be the intangible factors. That's why there's Cinderella teams. It's the intangibles.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And again, like it's networking. It's who you know. It's that little seed in the doubt in the mind where you maybe don't look professional, and that margin is so small at that level. It's so ultra competitive that you just can't leave it up for chance. You really can't if you're serious about it and you've put in too much work to leave that kind of stuff up for chance.
Good. Well, I want to end with this question, and it's a question I ask all guests. Imagine you're at your 100th birthday celebration. Who do you want there, and what do you want them saying about you? Because I think this will speak to who you are and your priorities. So, obviously my family. I've got two boys right now, and my wife. But obviously, I would hope at 100 they'll all be around and kicking. And I think I guess at this point in my life, a lot of close friends and athletes. I guess that. Hopefully that I've been able to help, and it's funny to think of yourself as mentoring the younger generation when you still feel pretty young yourself. But I've been able to bring that kind of mentorship side of the game to our business, not even intentionally, not even from a place of, hey, I've done this, and it's more of just noticing a hole and saying, hey, I can, let me help you with this, because I don't want you to feel that way. Sitting next to an NHL scout one day, I want you to be able to feel great about that. And I want you to feel that positive energy, and feel confident when you're in that situation. So, I think at that point, maybe a lot of some former students and, a lot of close friends, I think at that point in my life. Yeah. I love it. And it's inspirational to hear, especially at that developmental stage where you're obviously able to nail the technical and the skill set and the mindset stuff, but to give them those additional life skills and thoughts that will differentiate and transcend them from sport. Because
it's not just hockey, and that's we've been a lot of sport specific here, but it's outside of that. It's it's getting ahead in a job interview. It's a lot of, and again, we haven't really talked about networking, which is a huge thing. Yeah. When people are saying the right things about you because you're a good person, and you're generally there to help and make the team and the organization or the business better. We have guys working with us. Like we got a guy comes to mind, Curtis Dewasha, who's 19 years old and worked the school now and university student now. But I mean, he goes above and beyond every single session, drives in an hour to do a morning session, and he's the first guy there. He's got his coffee, he's dressed well. It's all these little things that I'm looking at, like these kids, and I'm saying, okay, this guy's got it. And, you want to help those type of people. You want to help them. They don't even have to ask for your help. They don't have to ask for a favor. I catch myself asking these kids, hey, how can I help you? Is there something I can do for you? And it's those little things that, we're not all told these things when we're kids, right? We're not all told these things, what to wear, how to act, how to be. And, sometimes you need somebody to kind of, ask if you need some help and kind of provide that to you. So that's kind of what we try to do essentially with the goalie school. It's not just the technique. It's kind of the 360 part of it. That's the whole kind of the whole circle kind of thing. It comes full circle. So that's kind of where the name came from as well.
I love it. Well, and, the work I'm doing more and more of now as I do more and more with athletes in action through my role as director of sport aid is, how can we impact lives through the power of sport? Mm-hmm. Right? Both for people in business as well as those actually in sport. And I love that developmental level. So I appreciate the work you're doing. I know we'll be doing more together down the road. And you talked about network. You wouldn't be here if we weren't networked through Rob, who came to me as a network through my editor for his book. Literally that's how I've been able to build my business. It wasn't certainly on any skill set or knowledge, wisdom. It was really not giving up too quick or too easy, and being able to develop relationships in a network that, over time you build it out. So I'm glad that you ended with that point, because we could have a 2-hour conversation just on that point. Yeah,
absolutely. Maybe time for another talk down the road here. We'll hook up again.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the time today, Dan, and all the best and continued success, and look forward to connecting here down the road.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it.